I'm not as young as I used to be, which means I can't treat my body the way I once did. In fact, last year's medical checkup didn't turn out the best, so I decided I needed to change things up and start eating healthier. One of the ways I do that is by making smoothies. But smoothie shop prices can be pretty high, and making them at home always seem like a pain. You gotta pull the blender out, find the right attachments, set everything up, and then cleaning everything is annoying, making it difficult to quickly whip up a breakfast smoothie in the morning. That's why I'm glad to tell you about the Blendjet 2 portable blender. Like I said, it's portable, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. Blendjet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. That's especially important to me because I wake up before the rest of my family, and once my kids are up, my morning work routine is pretty much shot to hell. And best of all, Blendjet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you're good to go. Blendjet 2 has over 30 plus colors and patterns to choose from, so if you don't like one design, there's definitely one that suits your personality. So what are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com and grab yours today. Be sure to use my promo code SuperCinemaPod12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the Blendjet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with the Blendjet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use my code SuperCinemaPod12. That's SuperCinemaPod and the numbers 12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today and get the best deal ever.
Once upon a time, there was a scorpion. This particular scorpion wanted to get across the river, but she couldn't swim. So she asked a frog for a ride.
Wasn't the frog scared of her?
He was scared, all right, but she promised that she wouldn't sting him. So they got about halfway across, and then he felt like a burning shot through his back. And he said, "Oh my, why did you do that? Now we're both doomed to die."
And what did the scorpion say?
She said I had to. It's in my nature.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, welcoming a new guest to this show. We've just recorded an episode for the Patreon show, which you guys may or may not have heard already, and that is Brad Mengel. Brad, how you doing today?
Good, thanks. How you going?
I'm doing pretty good. I've got my son strapped to my chest. Hopefully he'll fall asleep soon. My wife's running errands and my daughter's asleep, so it's just got to conk this one out too.
They rarely do it when you're on command.
Almost never. But whenever we're in the car, boom, right away he's out.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is your first time to this show, so why don't you tell the guests a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a writer, Pulp fan, your movie buff. Superhero fan, comic book fan. I write mainly action adventure, but I also write non-fiction stuff. I just released just earlier this year the unofficial guide to the Mummy and Scorpion King movies. So that was fun. And I've got one novel, Australis Incognito, out through Pro Se.
Okay, cool. So speaking of that, so I got to ask you just a tangent since you wrote a book about the Mummy movies. What's your take on Tomb of the Dragon Emperor? Because I know a lot of people hate that movie, but I actually found it kind of entertaining.
Oh, look, I enjoyed it. I could have done without the recasting of Rachel Weisz's Evie, but I think it was all right. It advanced the characters. There were choices I wouldn't have made. But Rob Cohen really loves his Chinese history, so he went to town. And I don't think it really opened up the franchise. They could have went to South America and Aztec mummies, Mayan mummies. There's mummies in New Guinea. There's mummies all over the world that you could interact with for that series. So, and the other one is you could have just gone off in other supernatural directions, much like the animated TV series did. So
there was an animated TV series based on it.
Yeah. Mummy the animated series, and then the second season it became Mummy, something about the Magi. Yeah, so it basically it focused on Alex. He put on this wristband, which caused him Secrets of the Magi. That's what it was called.
Okay.
He put on a wristband. You'd think it would have learned after the Mummy Returns. He put on a wristband. It gave him powers. Imhotep came back, and they basically went all over the world looking for these scrolls to try and get this thing off of his wrist. And of course, when they finally do get it off his wrist, he's got to put it back on to save his mum and dad. But they fought like werewolves and dragons and all sorts of supernatural creatures around the world. So that was an interesting way to really open up the lore.
That's news to me. I never heard about this series before. So that's I'll have to look into that later. Do you think it'd be worth a watch?
Oh, I enjoyed it. Season 1's on YouTube at the moment. Well, it was. Okay. It was about 5 or 6 months ago.
Yeah, who knows now if they're going to take down notices and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, another thing I like to ask guests lately is what are you interested in lately? Like, movies, TV shows, books, comics, anything. What's kind of grabbing your interest these days?
A bit of everything. I watched the Black Scorpion TV series just recently on Prime. And then that got me onto then it got me onto the comics and discovered there's a bunch of other characters called the Black Scorpion. So I sort of just start off somewhere and then just go down a rabbit hole and then eventually give up and then start a new rabbit hole.
So was that related to the fact that we're talking about the Black Scorpion movie today, or did you get into the TV show and then decide to come on here to talk about the movie?
Basically, I watched the TV show, TV series, and then I thought, what, I really need an excuse to watch the movies. And I think I just finished the show, and you put out the call, say, "Hey, I'd like some more co-hosts," and you know what? I need an excuse to rewatch the movie. So so I that's what I did. I just said, I'd like to do that one, I went and watched the 2 movies that they made, and then I think I glanced through the comic that they did a few years ago.
Yeah, it was Devil's Due, I believe.
Yeah, and it was reprinted by Blue Wave, Tidal Wave. Yeah.
Blue Water.
Blue Water, that's the one.
Yeah.
These companies, they change their names, and who can keep track?
Yeah. For my part, we're recording now in the wake of the 85th anniversary of Superman. So they had a big sale on Comixology for like all these Superman books. So I just I picked up the second Son of Kal-El book, and so I've been really enjoying that. It's a really fun take on John, and there's a Nightwing crossover there, and I love Nightwing, so it's been really fun to read that. And I also picked up all the New 52 books. So this is timely after we had just talked about Doomsday Clock, but I'm looking forward to, now that New 52 is over, I'm looking forward to kind of giving that run another chance and just kind of seeing how it reads when it's disconnected from the whole "this is not my Superman" type of thing.
Yeah. Tom Taylor's a great writer. He's based in Melbourne, so I've met him a couple of times.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He also did a series called The Deep, which is I believe is on Netflix. There was 2 comics, and then they turned it into a TV series on Netflix. Or started off on the ABC here, and then Netflix bought the international rights. So I believe it's on Netflix America. It's basically a family who live in a submarine and travel around the world, helping the ocean.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I actually recommended it to Derek before he passed, because the dad in the show just reminds me of Derek so much. Just in looks and personality. Sort of, I imagine what Derek would be like if he wasn't going to be Dylan. That's who he'd be. The dad for the Nectans.
I'll check that out. Definitely have to check that out now. Tom Taylor's great. I mean, he is he's a writer who has consistently surprised me with things and concepts that I thought would not work.
Mm.
Injustice being the prime example. When I heard about the concept behind the comic book and I read like summaries of the first issue, I'm like, this sounds god awful. I'm like, why would you do this? And then I read this, I'm like, oh shit, this is actually really fucking good. And then also with Superior Iron Man, after in the wake of the Axis stuff, where Iron Man was one of the heroes who had remained like semi-evil type of thing, and I'm like, why would you want to? And then I read the book, I'm like, oh, this is pretty damn good. I'm actually kind of digging this. So he's consistently been able to surprise me with these concepts that, and even to a lesser extent with Son of Kal-El, because I was bittersweet when they aged up John Kent, because I did enjoy his banter with like Damien and all that, and the Super Sons book. But at the same time, I wasn't opposed to it either. I wasn't so attached to the character that I thought it was a terrible idea. And it's been a really fun read. I really like that he's Superman, but he's taking a different approach to being Superman than Clark did. And I mentioned this. My buddy Anthony Desiato does a Superman show, and I mentioned this in a comment to one of the episodes they did when they covered the Son of Kal-El comics, where there's this great scene where Clark and John are talking, and John asks him, how come you haven't done more as Superman? Yeah. And Clark tells him, well, even though I was raised here, this is not my world. And so it's not really my place to impose my will on others. And on Anthony's show, they had commented on that it felt like a weird thing for Clark to say, because even though he was from another planet, he was raised on Earth, and he does tend to think of himself more as human than not. And I looked at it from the point of view of an expat, right? Me living in Japan, where it's like there's a lot of stuff that I criticize about Japan, but I'm also not a citizen here, so there's only so far I can go. So I could really relate to Clark from that point of view, and I thought it actually. I'm not sure if Tom Taylor is actually Australian or if he's an immigrant himself, but
I believe he was born in Melbourne.
He was born in Melbourne. Okay.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. It did read like something that it did read like the attitude an expat or an immigrant would have. So I thought that was a really interesting point of view.
Well, I think we sort of Australians sort of have that similar viewpoint of America. It's over there. We follow it crazily, but ultimately there's nothing we can do to change it. So, we can sit there and say, really, that's how the election went.
Tell me about it.
Oh, it was so funny that the day that happened, everyone's running around my office going, "We're going to die." And I said, what's going to happen? Why? And they're going, "Oh, he's going to go to war." And I said, "Who with?" And they go, "Russia." I said, "He's not going to war with Russia. He likes Russia." And they go, "Oh, okay." And then they just sat down and calmed down. Like,
it's funny. I've got one of my coworkers at the university. She's from Australia, and one time we were out for drinks, and she was saying, she's like, Australian politics is so boring. That's why I follow American politics.
Oh, yes. I'm going to say our greatest prime minister is probably the man in the Guinness Book of Records for quickest drinking of a yard arm of beer.
If you're going to ask me about Australian prime ministers, that is, I would probably guess something like that from the Aussies I've known.
I'm gonna say we've been through a few in the last few years. They have a tendency to knife each other in the back and go, "No, I'm going to be leader now."
Yeah, Japan has a lot of that too. We've got a lot of rotating prime ministers in that way. But anyway, like we had kind of hinted at before, today we're talking about Black Scorpion. This is a 1995 Showtime movie. It was direct to Showtime, and it was produced by Roger Corman, the late great Roger Corman, and it starring Joan Severance as the hero, and like you said, it had kind of a longevity to it, right? They got a sequel to it, and then Sci-Fi Channel had the TV show, which was one season with Michelle Lintel, and that was in 2001. And then there's also that comic book by it was a digital series by Devil's Deuce. That means it was fairly recent, actually, too.
Yeah, I think it was. Hang on, where's my notes? And of course, I didn't put that thing on, which
It looks like
yeah,
2011 or around there.
yes, and I think it got yeah, I think it was 2009, and then it got 2010, and then there was like another one shot that Blue Water did.
Okay, yeah.
After that.
So you had mentioned that you had watched this before. This is my first exposure to Black Scorpion. I'd never even heard of this before you sent me the email. But what is your history with this property?
Well, I'm a big fan of the modern pulp stuff, and one of the groups I was in, someone said, "Hey, this is really good modern pulp thing with a similar attitude to the Adam West, probably a little bit not quite as campy as the Adam West series, but similar attitude to it." And so I watched it, and I enjoyed it, and I ended up tracking down a copy for my own collection, and then getting two and the TV series and the books, and just going through everything. And I enjoyed it. Someone pointed out, there seems to be a little bit taken from a lot of different places. Batman's an obvious influence. The Phantom seems to be a bit of an influence in, her surname's Walker, and she has a ring that can brand people with a symbol that relates to her. So, there's a lot of stuff like that. And actually, from what I've read, they did this right after they did the Fantastic Four movie that never got released.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same script writer, and Corman produced it as well. And basically, what's his name? Craig Nevins sort of went to Roger Corman and said, "Hey, I want to make a proper superhero movie now that we can release." And so he wrote it, created the character. And they made this one. And it looks like the year after this, they did the Vampirella. Corman did the Vampirella movie that came out.
Oh, okay, with Talisa Soto, right?
Yeah.
I've heard of that, but I never actually saw it.
Let's just say it's not the best adaptation I've ever seen. They definitely didn't do the costume justice.
Yeah, I remember looking at seeing photos of it, and they definitely didn't match with what was in the comics of that. So what was kind of like your overall impression rewatching the movie for this podcast?
It was it felt a bit like a mockbuster version of Batman. And actually, when I looked up the dates, it came out the same year as Batman Forever, and the sequel came out the same year as Batman and Robin. So so very much a female Batman, as it were, with a little bit more sex.
A lot more sex, actually. Yeah, I mean, there's that full frontal nudity in this. They've got several scenes in that strip club. And that sex scene was it was a pretty graphic sex scene. Like it
was long. Of course, I was rewatching it just before we went to talk about it the other day, and I'm rewatching it, and my wife comes out just before that. And she's going like, "How long are they going for?" And I'm like, "Really wish I could fast forward this."
I had it was funny because when I got to that scene and the strip club scenes and everything else, my first thought was, because I knew this, I remember reading that this was direct to video or direct to TV, and my first thought was going into this that maybe it was like something like on Sci-Fi Channel or something like that. When I got to the nudity, I'm like, well, no, obviously not then. So my first thought was maybe this was a Cinemax movie. So I was actually kind of surprised when I looked it up and found out it was Showtime instead, because this definitely seems more like a Cinemax type of thing, where it's like the network goes to Roger Corman. It's like, we need a movie with we need a movie with some sex scenes in it. Here's $100,000 or whatever the budget is. Go make a movie. Make sure you have like X number of nude scenes in it, and then you're good to go.
Well, I haven't heard anything like that, but that was a bit of a surprise. But when I watched the other movies and the TV series, none of the others have any of that stuff. So I don't know whether Nevin's got it out of his system, or was just channeling early Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it's funny too, because when I was thinking about this movie and just like the especially the relationship between Black Scorpion and the police detective, her partner,
Yeah.
or her former partner, since she loses her job. And I was reminded a lot of the Halle Berry Catwoman movie. It kind of made me wonder.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wonder if like the screenwriter of Catwoman was like maybe on a deadline. He's just like, fuck, I'll just rip off the script from Black Scorpion, because a lot of stuff seems similar.
Yeah, well, I could see how that could be the case. Actually, I watched on my DVD copy that Joan Severance does some commentary on the movie and
Mhm.
does like a little bit of an introduction. And one of the things she says is they were reading a lot of comics. She was, the director was, and I know that, and Craig Nevins has come out and said, yeah, I'm a big fan. That's why I did the Fantastic Four movie. But I got the feeling they were, reading a lot of those Image Bad Girl comics.
Yeah.
The Watchblade, the She, the Razors, which they had a lot of sex. And Joan Severance certainly has the body to look like Todd McFarlane's drawn.
Well, they also, I was reading the trivia, they actually her costume was actually sewn on. So like every time they had to take it off, like they had to sew it back on every time you had a bathroom break or something.
Yeah, she was talking about that, and she was going, thank God I didn't get kicked in the bladder too often.
Yeah, Jesus. Now I had a less positive view of this movie than you did. I get that it's supposed to be camp and all that, and I'm fine with that. But when I was watching it, it felt like it didn't really commit to that idea of being campy. It felt like it was trying to hedge its bets a little bit, and it kind of made me. And some of the dialogue too was just, some of the performances are just really, really wooden. And so after I'd finished watching it, I was curious if it was just me or if it was the movie. So I thought I'd watch the first episode of the TV series to kind of compare the two.
Yeah.
And I watched that first episode, and I'm like, oh, this is actually a lot better. Like I felt like the TV show, it actually seemed to lean into the camp a little bit more. It seemed to be more comfortable with it, and the performances felt a little bit more genuine, as opposed to in the movie.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that assessment either. Yeah, the TV series is definitely better, and it is, as you said, they lent into it a lot more. They recast the guy who played the Breath Taker and got Adam West.
They got Adam West, and they also recast Black Scorpion too, right? It's Michelle Lintel in the TV show.
Yes, and then they got what's his name? The guy who played the Riddler.
Oh yeah, Frank Gorshin. Yeah,
Frank Gorshin turned up and played a villain too. So I think they lent more into that. They really went harder onto that Batman side of things, especially the Adam West TV series.
Yeah. Trying to see if there were anyone else. But yeah, when I was looking through the cast, it actually kind of disappointed me that they didn't have Breathtaker in the first episode, because that's what I was hoping, so I could see how Adam West played in the role. So and I didn't have time to watch any of the others, but I think I will go through and try to watch at least the Adam West and Frank Gorshin episodes.
Although, you can't go wrong having Martin Kove as a villain in the first episode, who's just gone crazy.
Well, I think that was also too. I mean, it kind of surprised me that the story actually had that first episode. The story actually had some decent themes they were trying to work with. It felt like there was an attempt to be a lot more layered than the movie was, and I really felt like when they were doing the TV show, at least judging from that first episode, they were really taking their jobs more seriously, because I was watching, one of the things that especially I noticed was the fight scenes, because Joan Severance, she may look good in that outfit, but my God, she's terrible at fight choreography, like just god awful. Like her kicks are just, and I'm not going to stand here and claim like I'm some martial arts expert or something, but I know what a kick is supposed to look like, and it's not supposed to look like that.
Yes. And she also makes reference to her stunt heels. So, if you watch carefully, apparently the heels will suddenly morph into flats during some of the fights. I agree. This first movie is tonally, it sort of wants to be a campy Batman type series, but it also wants to be that dark and gritty bad girl movie. It sort of doesn't quite straddle that line.
Yeah.
This, I think, the second movie, they sort of said, look, we're going to step away from some of the sex stuff, some of the gritty, the sex stuff, and they had a new villain, the gangster prankster, and apparently DC sort of said, I don't know if you can reuse him, if you can keep using him, because he looks like Tommy, Billy D. Williams's Two-Face mixed with the Joker. So it's like
Oh,
one
really?
half's the
Okay.
Joker, one half's like a Joker face, and the other half's a straight face. So
Mhm.
he was an interesting character. There's a lot of stuff they introduced in the TV series that I really liked. I like the idea of they had a mad scientist, Dr. Phoenix, whose whole goal was
Mhm.
he would resurrect he would clone the villains and try to rehabilitate them, and it just never worked.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, and just like some of the story beats too, I just like some things just didn't feel like they clicked together. Like the first off, just the opening scene with, I think would have worked, probably would have worked better is if her father, you mentioned the Phantom earlier.
yeah,
And when the movie opens up and they're listening to the police scanner and he
yeah.
says, "Well, I gotta go," you just stay away from the radio and all that. My thought was, I'm like, oh, maybe this is going to be like a legacy type of thing, and maybe he's going to be like the Black Scorpion first, and then he's
Mm.
going to die doing this job, and then she's going to grow up. So, and then you just find out he's just a very stereotypical cop. Just like it's like every cop movie cliche all rolled up into one.
Oh, I love the bit when he's in the chase and he says, "Call an ambulance because somebody's going to need it soon."
Yeah. I did think it was funny they got Rick Rossovich to play him though from
Yeah,
Slider from Top Gun.
yeah, yeah. So he was, and of course he's like, the bitter cop, like, yeah, lawyers got me sacked. He's going,
Mm-hmm.
she's going, no, you got you sacked.
Yeah, and then also when they're in also too that scene when he brings them into the emergency room,
Yeah,
the two criminals he's chasing, and one of them gets away, and I'm just like, wait, how come these guys weren't fucking cuffed? I mean, come on.
yeah. And he takes the shot and he goes, "Oh, you hit both of his lungs." And I'm like, "Was this?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that.
Did he shoot JFK as well with that
Yeah,
bullet?"
I was about to say that. Sounds like some Oliver Stone magic bullet bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. So and I can understand. It's like, Breathtaker took what was it, 18 years, 28 years or something,
Mm-hmm.
to get his revenge. And like, dude, you're clearly stewing on this a bit much.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're going to do it sooner. Um,
And also
yeah,
that kind of goes to the tonal inconsistency was the stuff with Breathtaker, because the movie starts off and it makes it seem like it's going to be a B movie, a B revenge movie or something like that,
yeah.
like a direct to video revenge movie that's going to try to take itself kind of seriously, and just going to have a lot of bad acting. And then you get to this cutaway of Breath headquarters, and you see this guy, and you see the Breathtaker in this ridiculous suit of armor, and he's talking about his asthma agents or something like that. I'm like, what the
Wheezing
fuck is
Warriors.
happening? Yeah, Wheezing Warriors. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening here? I'm like, did I just like to be, and to be honest, I did have a drink, and I'm just like, I didn't drink that much. Like, is this laced with something? Because it just felt so tonally inconsistent from what we had just
Yeah.
been watching.
Oh yes. Yeah, very much so. And so I'm used to a certain level of ineptitude of cop
Mhm.
in these things, but these cops just take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And when they went to the TV series, the rookie cops are just like 10 times worse.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell
And
that just from the first episode. I'm just like, if I watch the rest of the series, these two are definitely going to get on my nerves.
yeah, and it's like, and it feels like Darcy just sort of says, "Look, sod this. I'm not even going to try and be a cop. I'm just rocking up to a crime scene and I'm putting on the costume."
Mm-hmm.
It's almost that level of Batman incompetence in the police force.
Yeah, and I also it didn't, and just like her whole reasons for becoming the Black Scorpion and just like everything, it felt like we're taking several leaps to get to these conclusions
Yeah,
that she draws. Um, And there's that one point in the movie too where I thought it was weird when she says like "Goodbye, Black Scorpion" or something like that. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what? But then that
Yeah.
seems like it. So I'm like, wait, she's giving up, but why? And then it doesn't seem to actually result in anything.
It's like, well, it was almost like, well, I've shagged my partner. I'm that's all I need this for.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then she's like, oh yeah, there's a bad guy still out there. I better go fix that up. I noticed that similar thing happened in Batman Forever.
I was about to say, because you'd mentioned Batman Forever earlier, and we had covered that, fairly recently on the show. And I remember, that's one of the things that always bugged me about that movie. It's like, okay, he's giving up being Batman because he falls in love with his psychiatrist, and who he's only been out with like on 2 dates, mind you.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you've still got Riddler and Two-Face out there. And it was the same thing there was a similar thing in Spider-Man 2 where, he gives up being Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Dr. Octopus is still on the run. I'm just like, I can understand it if you do it like in Batman and Robin, where Mr. Freeze is now in Arkham. So now it's like, okay, this is a good chance for me to give it up. Now I wrapped up all the loose ends. Now I can retire.
I've got Robin who can take over. Yeah. It's always, that just seems a bit of a weird way. And then it was almost felt like that was just the setup for that joke where she goes, oh, can I have my costume back? And he goes, yeah, I'm just going to keep looking for the naked woman in here.
Yeah.
And it's a joke. And you're like, no, it's not. It's not a good joke anyway. But speaking of jokes that did work for me, I did like the police chief. He comes out puffing on the cigarette. He goes, you look a bit stressed, chief. He goes, yeah, I'm giving up cigarettes. He's puffing away. And he's like, and then later on he goes, he's going, light me up. And he goes, you're already lit. Oh, that's why I'm going to cough. So yeah, hit that. I really like that stuff. That was sort of, had that, to me, it had that right level of humor. Whereas, other things just seem to just either go too wacky or too grim.
I mean, I think that's the biggest problem. And I had, we just covered Power Rangers fairly recently, the 2017 one. And one of the things that frustrated me about that movie was I'm not sure if you saw it, but there's this one scene where it's two of the characters, they're like doing these martial arts moves, they're like fighting over a donut or something, and it's fun. It's a fun scene. Watch them go back and forth. And if you're doing it like that, if you're doing something like Power Rangers, you got to lean into the camp. You got to lean into the ridiculousness of it. But they try to make it so serious, and it was very similar problem with this movie too, where it's like, stuff with like the police chief, like when he comes out and he's like, you're stressed. Like, I just quit smoking while he's puffing away on the cigarette. Yeah, that's perfect. I want to see more stuff like that. If you're going to do camp, like commit to it. Don't half-ass it.
Yeah. Oh, and how good was Garrett Morris as Argyle?
Oh yeah. He was fun.
Yeah. It's getting to the streets aren't even safe for criminals anymore.
And I thought it was, and this is what I'm talking about, the ridiculousness, right? Because he owns this chop shop, and it's so funny because she comes to him and he's like, well, I'm not going to trust you because you're a cop. She's like, well, actually, I quit being a cop. Oh, he's like, well, then come on inside. I'm like, that would just be, it'd be so easy to get this for an undercover cop to convince this guy. You have to do a lot of work. Just say like, oh no, I'm not a cop anymore. He's like, all right, come on in then. No checking up or anything.
But they had that relationship though. He calls her True Blue, and he knows that she's an honest cop, and he knows that she's honest, so she's not going to lie to him just to get that arrest.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit on the nose though.
Oh, definitely.
But the thing that I thought was hilarious was that and when I saw in the credits about they'd mentioned the Scorpion Mobile in the credits. I'm like, okay, so, and then when he pops in, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going to happen. She's going to work with him. He's going to design the Scorpion Mobile and all that. And then he drives up in her car and I'm like, oh, that's a weird thing to say that to credit the Scorpion Mobile in the opening like that.
Yeah.
And then he transforms the car and he tells her he's got they'd stolen this secret, I don't know, government matter changer or alterer or something like that. Yeah. I'm just like, this is so ridiculous and stupid, but it works for what they're trying to do. And I'm like, more stuff like this, please. Just like be ridiculous with it.
That's the thing I didn't get with the Scorpion Mobile. It's like, how do the rear view mirrors work? Because they're up outside the car, up on the top, and it's like, what, you got to just like look up like that to get it? I'm like, no, that's. But yeah, it's a really nice looking car. Aside from that, I
Mm.
liked it. And I like the computer going, yo, computer, do
Yeah,
this.
because of
I
course
think
it's a black guy designing the computer, so it's got to speak in slang.
yeah. Although I do want to change my Google to do that. Just go, yo, Google.
um, but yeah, I mean, I think, and that stuff was fun. Like, if we had
Yeah.
more of that, I think this would have been. It would have excused a lot of the poor action and the bad
Yeah.
acting. But as it stood, it just I think too many people just didn't quite get the assignment. Like again, you look at Power Rangers, you look at Elizabeth Banks in that movie. She got the assignment. She is
Yeah.
camping the shit out of that thing. If you look at Uma Thurman in Batman and Robin, she got the
Yeah.
assignment, right? And
Yeah.
Joan Severance, I don't think she got the assignment.
No, like I said, she'd been reading a lot of comics, and I got the feeling she was reading a lot of bad girl comics, and that's that's the performance she was going
Yeah.
for. And I don't think it was necessarily what the filmmakers were going for. So I think they just sort of went, look, we'll just make the best of what we got.
Yeah, I mean, what you figure something like this probably had a tight production schedule as well, just because it's Roger
very
Corman.
much.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I get the feeling that even if they knew they weren't on the same page, they're like, "Fuck, we don't have time. Let's just go with it."
Yeah. Yeah, they probably spent most of the budget doing up that suit and the car.
Yeah, probably. And yeah, it's just like like one of the reviews says that the mood of the film swerves from straightforward police noir themes to cartoony superhero action.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly what the problem is. And it's just pick a side, pick a lane, and either way it would be fine. And that's why I was
sorry. They sort of course corrected a bit. I think they course corrected with the second movie and the TV series, which was actually
definitely
filmed
with the TV show. Yeah.
Yeah, it was filmed in '98. So because there's a behind the scenes documentary on one of the videos I've got, and there's like these camcorder footage for going 1998. So it's like, yeah, it took 3 years to sell the TV series. So clearly that's why we never got a second season.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was very impressed with how well that first episode is, because it's very campy. Like just right from the start with the skinheads robbing the gun store, and they're just completely over the top. And then she comes in with her Scorpion mobile and starts, blowing the shit out of it. And I'm like,
yes,
okay, yeah, I'm fine with this. This works.
Yeah, and I think the mayor was a better character in the TV series. Was what's his name? Robert Pine, Chris Pine's dad.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, he was very over the top. He was perfect. I thought that was great. Like he was just so ridiculously openly corrupt, and just reveling in it.
And then yes, very openly corrupt, and and he's got the secretary who's like, yes, we're just gonna go use the city's fund to go buy me a handbag.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to mention of it? I'm having trouble finding a whole lot of things to talk about this movie, because it was just
Well, I found it funny. There was actually a few other characters, as I said earlier, called the Black Scorpion. There was one from like a fanzine in the '60s, and then there was another one. It was a very Green Hornetish character. Ron Fortier and another writer from the Green Hornet, when they now comics finished their series, they said, "Oh, look, we've got a couple other stories. We're going to write this character," and it's actually a African American newspaper publisher who becomes the Black Scorpion. And after these came out and the TV series came out, they tried to revamp both those characters, and they had to change, and they changed the names to avoid confusion. So the fanzine Black Scorpion became Lady Scorpion, and then the Black Scorpion became the Green Hornet character became the Blue Scorpion. Because apparently there was a deal to put that into development. And the other thing I found, there was a really bizarre couple of those fetish videos where you beat they have the off-brand superheroes that like a Supergirl, and she gets bashed up by the villains, and there's all that type of stuff. There's actually 2 of those with Black Scorpion. which was
Okay.
they're really weird. Yeah, so it's got the costume, the Black Scorpion costume's not that bad, but the rest of the villains you're just looking at and going, your costumes don't look anything like what
Mhm.
the TV show had. The gangster prankster is now white, and one half of his face is Heath Ledger's Joker, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm watching this just for completeness sake, but
Mhm.
it was very odd. And then but they actually called the character the Black Scorpion. They didn't, try and, change it to, like when you look at the Supergirl, it's something like Supra Girl. They just
Oh,
didn't
right.
even
Yeah,
bother.
yeah.
They didn't even bother trying to make this look like it was off brand. It was just went, here's a Black Scorpion, and this is Black Scorpion 2, Rise of the Villains. And they just went, okay. And yeah, no acknowledgements or anything. It's just like, yeah, this isn't going to make enough money for anyone to even try and sue us. Yeah,
So
even
what
my
did you
right.
think of the so you I
Oh,
mean you
sorry.
had read the Black Scorpion comics then. How do
Yeah,
those compare to the movies and the TV show?
it's very much a grim and gritty reboot. Darcy's father actually is the chief of police,
Okay.
and Breathtaker hires gangster prankster to shoot her father. So,
Mhm.
but I like the idea of you've got the asthma puffer and that's got the mind controlled drug in it. They sort of wipe that all away, and it's like, no, gangster prankster shot him, and she's like, I'm going to get revenge, and I'm going to become the Black Scorpion, and you're like, okay, you've got the movie. Why are you reimagining it?
Mhm.
And I'm actually surprised it didn't make it into comics back in the 90s. It looked like it would have been a no-brainer.
It would have seemed like I mean I'm
Mhm.
guessing because that was the mid '90s, so I'm
Yeah.
guessing at that point they were that was after the
Oh,
bottom had fallen out. So I'm guessing that's probably
that's
why
a
they didn't try.
that's probably why too. Yeah, I didn't think of that. What was the other thing I was going to say? Uh, oh, yeah. Why didn't make it earlier? No, I've lost the plot now. Completely lost
Well,
what I was
well,
going to say.
well. Maybe this will come back up then. But one of
Yeah.
the things I wanted to ask you about is because I'm reading some of the information about the TV show, and it mentions like about Breathtaker. Despite dying in the Black Scorpion movie, Breathtaker is
Yeah.
resurrected by Dr. Phoenix. So this isn't like the Crow TV show where it's
Mm.
it's not connected to the movie. They redid the origin story and everything. This is actually a sequel to the movies.
Yes, yes, very much
Okay.
so. Yeah. Basically, she gets a new partner, but he basically does exactly, he's,
Mhm.
they changed, they might as well have kept the partner with the same name, but I guess they bring him in as like, yeah, we're not going to do the will they won't they,
Mhm.
keep doing that. There's just like, no, we're going to do new partner and we'll do the will they won't they. And the new partner is actually Mallory's boyfriend from Family Ties,
Oh,
all
okay.
all cleaned up, not looking like Sylvester Stallone
Mhm.
in Rambo, but looking like Sylvester Stallone in Tango and Cash.
Mhm. Okay, that
Um,
makes
yeah,
that makes sense then because I was wondering when I watched that first episode why they changed the name of her partner and they bring him in as a transfer and everything like that. But
yeah,
now that makes sense why they did that because they were trying to make it a sequel and the old
yeah,
partner had already left.
yeah, yeah. I think in the second movie he said, "Look, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to transfer out. I
Mhm.
don't trust you anymore." So I think they sort of said, "Look, we've got that continuity." Um, but actually, do you hear the funny story about why they made the TV series?
No.
So apparently Roger Corman, they did the two movies, they rated really well, and a German production company said we would like to license Black Scorpion for a TV series. And
Mhm.
Roger Corman goes, "Well, I had no plans for a TV series, but I turned around and said, wouldn't you know it? We're going to make a TV series ourselves. So you'll have to buy it from us." And that was the whole reason they did a TV series. It's just like, yeah, I'm just going to screw over these German guys.
Mhm. Something
Um,
else interesting too. Just looking at the trivia here, and first off, Joan Severance said that she still owns the mask.
yes.
And while they were shooting the car chase in this movie, the news helicopters appeared because they thought it was a real car chase. They didn't know it was a
Yes.
stage thing.
Yes. Yeah, and
Then the
that
other,
actually got on the news. Yeah.
yeah, another thing that I found interesting is what Corman had said about his decision to cast Joan Severance because he said that my demands were I felt not difficult in Hollywood. I wanted an actress who was beautiful and had a great figure. because we economized on the amount of cloth we used in the costume, I wanted a tall actress. She does a lot of martial arts. I couldn't have a 5'1" actress beating up all these big guys, so I wanted a tall, beautiful woman with a good figure who was a good actress, but I wasn't looking for Meryl Streep, just a good actress. I figured this would be pretty easy in Hollywood. It turned out to be incredibly difficult. I've never seen so many beautiful bad actresses in my life.
Yeah, he's told that story a couple of times. He told it for the casting of the TV series as well. Yeah. And I think, the TV series definitely worked a lot better. There's a lot more.
It did. I was gonna say, like, Michelle Lintel is she's a much better actress. Like, and so when I read that, I'm just like, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, you still didn't really find a good actress, though, did you?
I think he found an all right actress. She just wasn't playing the role that they wanted.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really, it was very tonally inconsistent. But like I said, there was a lot of course correction, and I think it as it went on, had they've got a second season and carried on with the show, I think, it would have just continued to get better and better. But
well, yeah, I mean, just judging from that first episode, like I said, it was a very strong first episode. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they had kept on iterating it like they had done already, and they'd fix some of the stuff that didn't work with the movies to very good effect. It would have been really interesting to see what they would have done if they had had a second season. I mean, if you're going to be doing a camp thing, I mean, it makes total sense that you would bring in like Adam West and Frank Gorshin. It shows exactly that. Again, they got the assignment. They knew what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Apparently, the story I heard, and I don't know how true it is, was they actually wanted Adam West to play Breathtaker in this movie, but I don't know whether they couldn't get him or he just was unavailable. And they got what's his name, Casey. Oh geez,
Casey Siemaszko. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
Yes, and I'm thinking, you just didn't feel right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he was 3D in the Back to the Future movies. One of Biff's gang.
Yeah,
he was also in the Phantom apparently too.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he played Morgan. Oh, the Phantom's a great movie. Like, but that's another movie where it feels like some of the cast got the assignment, some of the cast didn't. Right? Because you look at it and Billy Zane, Catherine Zeta-Jones, they're perfect. They're perfectly on point in that movie. Kerry Tagawa as well. But then you've got Kirsty Swanson and Treat Williams, who are just just bad.
Yeah.
And I think it's a similar problem with this movie. It's just like, some people understood what kind of movie they were making, and some people didn't. And it feels like even with the director and the writers, they didn't quite understand either exactly what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Actually, have you seen the Fantastic Four movie that they did in '94? Like, how did that turn it? Like, was that a good, relatively speaking, Fantastic Four movie, or did it have that similar?
I mean, it's
tonal thing.
It's been years since I've seen it. I haven't seen that movie in like 20 years, so I'd have to watch it again to really give like a solid opinion. But when I watched it before, or maybe when I'd watched it like 20 years ago, and I'd only watched it once, it was I thought it was just bad at that time.
Yeah.
However, I will say that some people have gone and said, like, no, if you excuse the bad effects and the crappy film quality, this is actually not bad for a Fantastic Four movie. It's actually got a pretty decent story in it. Mark Buskett, who's been on this show, he had done a review of it, I think on Derek's movie review site, of talking about it and actually saying that it was actually a pretty decent Fantastic Four story. So I'd be curious to go back and take another look at it, but my memory of it was that it wasn't very good. I will say though, if I'm comparing this to my memory of Fantastic Four, and if you asked me, you have to watch either Black Scorpion or Fantastic Four, I might go with Fantastic Four.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying,
unless I'm in a horny mood, then I'll watch Black Scorpion.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, it's the same writer, so I was just curious, and it was like only about a year apart. So I was just curious if the writer, how much you could blame on the writer.
This writer doesn't strike me as someone who's overly skilled at what he's doing. But I will say that it does seem that he was. You can definitely get the feeling that he was a fan of comic books. Like, judging from the Fantastic Four script, like it does a really good effort to stay true to the source material. Like, they try to stay very true to what the origin was and everything. Try to stay true to the characters. It's just that I don't think this guy is a good enough writer, or the cast were good enough actors to really do it, to really sell it. And I think too, when you're sometimes, especially if you're reading comic books like in the 90s, or if you and he's writing movies in the mid 90s, so I assume he grew up on like Silver Age comic books then. Which tells me that, I mean, you go back and you read some of the dialogue in those old books, I love them to death, but that dialogue does not work in a movie. It just doesn't. It just doesn't work. No. And you've got to make some changes. And I don't think he really understood that. I don't think he. I think he was too. And it reminds me of talking about Fantastic Four, like the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, or like Mark Steven Johnson with Daredevil and Ghost Rider. It's clear both these guys love the source material. Very clear that they're huge fans of it. I get that, but it's just, you got to draw a line somewhere, right? As a creator, this too. Like, you got to put your fanboy side in the closet when you're sitting down to write these things. Otherwise, it's going to color your perceptions.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, this is my only chance to do a Fantastic Four movie. I got to throw everything in.
Exactly.
And so I think he probably was maybe a little bit scared doing his own character.
I think too, it's because also in the 90s, if you want to do something that's a love letter to Batman 66, the 90s was like the worst possible time to do it, because that was probably when the reputation of Batman 66 was at its lowest, right?
Oh, yes.
I mean, because all of us who had grown up watching that show, then we had spent like all of basically from like the 1970s up until the early 2000s, anytime there was something in mass media about superheroes, like anytime there was a newspaper article or anything, it was always biff, pow, zam, and just like, it was like the laziest, most hackneyed headline writers and all that, and just like everything was being compared to Batman 66, and Batman 66 was held up as, this is what superheroes are, and all of us who were reading stuff like that were like, no, it's not. It's good. There's serious stuff here.
It's gone beyond that now.
And now we can look back on it. Now we've had a lot more competing stuff. So now it's like, okay, a lot of people have justifiably come around on Batman 66. And I'm one of them. Like, I hated it in the 90s. But as I got older, I'm just like, man, actually, it's fun. It's very kishy. It's very campy. And it's clear that they were doing that intentionally, right? They weren't just they weren't stupid enough to think this is how superheroes are supposed to be. It's like they were trying to do something that was campy. And this, it feels like maybe they wanted to do something that was campy, but they were afraid about how it would be perceived as too campy, and so they just they kept hedging their bets on it.
I know Joel Schumacher sort of did the same sort of thing. He was like, I'm going to be a little bit campy, but not too campy.
Yeah, I mean, Batman Forever was a weird movie in a lot of ways, and we talked about this on that episode. But it's just, it doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't. And I think part of that is because Schumacher, I don't think, even really knew what it was supposed to be, because he went in with the expectation that he was going to do a dark, serious movie more in line with the Burton films. And then he pitched year one. That's what he wanted to do, and they're like, no, we don't want to do that. We want something that's more fun. So he was just kind of like,
I think he had about several masters telling him which way to go.
And the original cut of Batman Forever was supposed to be much darker, apparently, too. And then when it came to Batman and Robin, they're just like, we want camp. We want full-on camp. And Joel Schumacher just basically committed to doing camp. And honestly, now looking back on it, I enjoy Batman and Robin a lot more than I enjoy Batman Forever.
It's one of those. It's one of those things, like we say, what's it they said at the end of Dark Knight? You live long enough, you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. And it seems like if you live long enough, still they'll come back around to you being a hero. I noticed that.
Oh yeah,
Adam West. Like everyone went, oh no, you stay away from Batman. Like no, we reevaluate it. You're actually really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's because he begged to be in Batman 89. Like he was begging to have some role, and they're just like, we want nothing to do with you. We want nothing to do with it. And then, Batman the Animated Series was probably the first crack in the door when they brought him in to play the Gray Ghost. And then after that, slowly, and then he ends up doing Return of the Cape Crusaders and Batman versus Two-Face. And he ends up having this, people taking a second look at what he was doing there.
Did you ever see Back to the Batcave? The Misadventures of Bert and
Oh, no. I was thinking of something else. No, I haven't seen that.
So basically it was the only way you could sort of make a Batman 66 movie without making a Batman 66 movie, and it was sort of a biopic.
Right. It was like Adam West and Burt Ward playing like fictionalized versions of themselves or something like that.
A bit of that, yeah. And then they were going through traps that were from the villains, but they were, it's Gorshin playing Gorshin, but essentially being the Riddler. And they sort of were going, oh yes, I remember when we started filming Batman, and then they do flashbacks and they show, recreate with different actors the Batman 66. And I think they sort of, Blue Water did a similar comic, basically did a comic book, with Adam West having adventures, and then.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that on Amazon or something, or Comixology back in the day, like the Adventures of Adam West or something like that.
Yeah, and there's a Julie Newmar one where she's basically being Catwoman, and there's a Burt Ward one where they just basically say, oh yes, he goes through some mist and into a different dimension and becomes young again, and like, yeah, okay, I'll let that happen.
Okay. So I think we're now just talking Batman 66. I think we've pretty much exhausted the Black Scorpion talk. I mean, I will say if you're curious about it, it is free. Like it's on YouTube. The Black Scorpion TV show, it's on Plex. I was able to find it and watch the first episode.
And there's some episodes on YouTube I've spotted, but and as I said, it's on Prime here in Australia. I don't know if that's anyway. It's on Tubi in Australia, so. This is the thing I always go in Australia because people say, "Oh my god, this thing's on Tubi," and I race to Tubi and go, "Not on Tubi Australia."
Yeah. So it's not hard to find. Like it's on one of the free streaming sites, no matter where you are. So it's not. If you're curious, you can go check it out. I mean, honestly, I would just say if you're really curious about Black Scorpion, I would recommend watching the first episode of the TV show, seeing if you like that kind of thing, and then I'd probably just stick with that. I can't really recommend the movie too much. It's just it wasn't. Again, I'm also reminded of Morbius, because Morbius disappointed me, not because it was not because I was expecting it to be good, but because I was expecting it to be monumentally terrible, and it wasn't. It was just middling. It was just boring, and I think Black Scorpion had a lot of that to it.
Yeah, I think because I'd watched the TV series, some of the stuff in the series made a little bit more sense after watching the movies. But realistically, if you go, look, they're just resurrecting the villains as clones, just run with it, and it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's complex storytelling in those movies to begin with.
No.
Okay, Brad, but thank you for coming on, and why don't you tell people where they can find your stuff?
I've got a blog, pulpybrad.blogspot.com, I think it is. That's about it. I'm a bit of a Luddite with the social medias.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll have a link to that in the show notes, so make sure to send that to me after we sign off here.
Yeah.
And everyone else, thank you so much for listening. And if you sign up to the Patreon page, then you can get these episodes a week in advance. Plus, you also get access to the Book Club podcast, companion show, where once a month talk about comic books and graphic novels. As we said at the top of this episode, I just recorded an episode with Brad where we talked about Doomsday Clock. Had a really good conversation about that, comparing it to Watchmen and the Watchmen TV show, and talking about the whole idea of doing a sequel to that story. A lot of fun conversations we had in there. Arguably a better conversation than we had about Black Scorpion, I think.
So what I'm hearing is I'm not coming back to do Black Scorpion 2.
We're probably not. I'm not in any rush to put it to do it. Let's just we'll hold off on scheduling that one for now. But anyway, superherocinephiles.com is the website. Super Cinema Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time. If you enjoy the Superhero Cinephiles, then you'll also love my companion podcast, the Superhero Cinephiles Book Club. All my Patreon subscribers get access to this exclusive podcast where I review superhero comics and graphic novels. Not sure what comics you want to read next or what you should dive into? I've got you covered on that. I'll be doing reviews, recommendations, and also talking to you about useful entry points if you're interested in reading some comics but don't know where you should start. Plus, you'll get access to all episodes of the main show a week before everyone else. On all of this for as little as just $1 a month. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/supercinemapod and you can sign up at any subscription amount to get started. Thanks so much for your support, and please don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.